What's up, gearheads? Yeah, it's been about another week since I've been on here. I know it. Been slacking a little bit out there. A few nights this week, enjoying the boat, enjoying the at least one project finished. Well, it's August 23rd, Sunday evening. Came out in here to the shop, messed with the Hemi a little bit. I'm gonna get back on that. Yep. Our main reason for starting this whole channel, and the one thing we haven't been doing much on. Well, we were waiting on some parts, remember, if you've been following along, and got the parts back from, or the pistons. I got the pistons back from Swain Coatings. I don't know if you remember, and I'll reiterate the whole story right quick. We jumped on this used Veney motor that we bought it's been about, 5-6 months ago now, maybe. It was a way to start to get back into a Hemi since I sold my Brad motor last year this time. So we did that deal down in Texas where we traded a 496 big block and a few bucks for what was supposed to be a rebuilt blown alcohol 500-inch Hemi. Well, it ended up being a busted up TFX block with broken main caps and old Veney heads and a cracked 3-inch 750 stroke crank. So it was only 435 inches. So anyway, we've been working through the problems, and it's just taking little by little to get through the problems because we have probably a little more time than we have money. Again, if you've been following the videos, my brother, he went a different direction, so I'm back on this basically by myself, and that's all right. You know, we're going to do what we can. But one of the problems we addressed was the main cap deal. If you remember, I made a new main cap. Remember that cracked cap? We made a new cap. I line honed the block, got that all fixed up, and then we went ahead and checked the crank. We were going to balance the crank it came with. The crank was cracked. It was an old Crower. It wasn't a billet crank either. It was an old 4340 crank. But ended up getting a crank from my buddy Jagger. It's got a splined snout, which I'm going to have to call Robert Reel, and see if I can see if he's got a used RCD hub, so we could finish that up. And I'll need the gear for the gear drive. So this had a regular 2-keyway crank for a regular hub. Most of your old cranks had 2 keyways broached in it to help drive the blower, and not like old Chevrolet. If you ran 1 keyway, you'd rip the keyway off from all the pressure from the blower. So the Hemis and the big block Chevys, they broached the 2nd keyway, and then they got real serious, and the fuel cars went with the splined snout. So that's what's on there now. So I'm missing a few parts for that. But anyway, that crank is a 4-inch 150 stroke. So now our combination is right up to 500 inches. So it's closer to what we would need to be in an alcohol funny car. So 526 probably being the most common, normal combination. Well, 500 inches isn't quite there, but it's a lot better than 435, I think. So then the next problem we had, we couldn't get the compression where I felt it was safe. And that was because we couldn't find any pistons for this thing. When we took this Veney motor apart, it had some old fuel pistons in it that were down in the hole, very small dome volume, and with that big chamber of that Veney head, when I figured the compression, the motor was only 6.5 to 1. So that tells me that somebody put some fuel pistons in it, or maybe the guy thought he had an alcohol motor, or maybe it was a fuel motor. I don't know what he had. Supposedly the motor came out of a drag boat, and it was just built and ready to go, which the guy actually argued the point with me when I said, well, I'm not worried about it. I'm going to take it apart, and I'm a motor builder. I'm going to check it all out and do my thing with it anyway. He said, no, don't take it apart. Put it in the car. It's ready to go. Yeah, okay. Sure. Bend over. This isn't going to hurt. Yeah. So we took it apart and found it was all fucked up. It had It had it wiped out. It had a cam with a bad lobe in it. It had some bent valves. It had a broken lifter, a couple of broken rockers. Again, it had low compression pistons in it. It had some big Brooks fuel rods in it that I was going to try to use. If you remember, if you watched along, I made some bushings, fixed those rods. But when I had to go to the larger stroke with that connecting rod length and my compression height, the compression ratio was through the roof. I mean, I was up to like 14 to 1. And maybe on an unlimited budget with a killer combination, NHRA style, maybe that would be the way to go if you're going to have a lot of parts to sacrifice up to the aluminum gods. I don't. I only have this one motor, so I want to make it last as best as I can, even though it is all junk. So we had to buy some pistons. Again, if you've been following along, had a hell of a time finding pistons. But I did get with Justin Aries, who's with CP Carrillo. Again, this is all stuff I've already gone over. He got us some pistons. And I bought 10 pistons. So after the pistons came in, I was kind of held up till the pistons came in. It took us a couple months to get the pistons, actually. Pistons finally came in. I fixed that main cap, line honed the block. We found the cracked crank. We put Jagger's crank we got in there, that billet 4-inch 150 stroke. Got our 500 inches, and I thought we were good to go at that point. The only thing we were lacking was we needed, with the pistons we got from Justin, and the only thing he had for a shelf piston, you can see all the scribble on here, trying to figure out how I could make things work with what I had. These pistons have a pin height of, what was it? Has a compression height of 1 inch 428. So we'll just call it 1 inch 430. It's kind of an oddball compression height, but what the piston was made for, it was made for a 541 inch. It was made for a bore of a 4375, which we had, but for a 4.5 inch stroke. So with a 175 cc head, this would have been a 12 to 1 compression with a deck height of 10,720, which is your normal Hemi deck height. Well, again, this is that TFX, they call it a half down, meaning it's minus a half inch. So the deck height of this block is 10 inch 225. So when I started figuring this up, when we had that 3-inch 750 crank, I said, okay, no problem. We'll put some long 8-inch, 7-inch, what am I saying? What rods did I figure? 6-inch 875 rods with this compression height, and with the length rods we had, which were those Brooks fuel rods, the 6.875 rod, this piston, 3-inch 750 stroke, we would have came right out at a nice 11 to 1 compression ratio. Well, when the crank ended up being cracked, that screwed up that whole combination, because now we got more stroke. So I didn't have a set of rods to get where I needed to be. So the optimum rod I probably needed was right around 600-700. And found some rods we picked up down in Florida. These rods, again, used. Yeah, I know. These supposedly have 9 to 10 runs on them. GRP is not really my favorite brand, but we'll have to, they'll have to do for now, because that's all we got. 6-inch 705 is what the rod length is. That's what we found used. And with my math, that puts it at 17 in the hole. With a 60 thousandths gasket, will be 12.5 to 1. With a 90 thousandths gasket, we're 11.5 to 1. So I'm probably going to start out with a 90 thousandths gasket, get her warmed up, see what she'll do. She stays together on a couple outings, and we're lacking a little power. We could always slide a different head gasket in there and get a little more static compression ratio. Again, we got enough blower because we got the fresh Cabelco K11 Superman, and I have the Littlefield High Helix 1471, which is a little less of a blower. I'll probably start out with that to get it dialed in with the 11.5 to 1. So my next problem, and this is all why this whole debacle been held up for so long. So after I figured out what crank we had, what rods we needed, I threw the crank on the balancer, rebalanced the crank, got my pistons what I wanted, got the rod length right, we got our compression ratio where we needed to be. I said, and this is something I should have did first, I should have threw this in the fucking Honer and checked these cylinders out, because Lord knows, why would they be any damn good when everything else was fucking shot in this motor? So, started checking the cylinders, and man, they had more taper in these cylinders. This must have been the first and only set of sleeves in this block. So at that point, instead of trying to get the holes exactly the same, hole to hole, like I would in an NA motor or a circle track motor or a max effort NA drag motor, I was more interested in trying to get the taper out of the cylinders. Because, I mean, some of these cylinders had like 5/1000 taper in them. And I know a blown motor, you could get away with a lot more than you can on an NA motor, but I'm just trying to get things as right as I can. So after honing the cylinders and getting all the taper out of them, I got them straight as I could. I probably got them straight. Oh, and I'm not proud of this. They're probably they're within a half a thou up and down. Some a little closer. The worst ones are probably as off as a half a thou from top to bottom, but it is what it is. But by getting, like I said, some cylinders had like 4,000 or 5,000 taper in them. So getting them down to half a thousandths top to bottom, it's a lot better. Problem I ended up with, once I did my piston in the wall, I ended up with, and I write a notebook for all my personal motors so I can go back to refer to things, as we go, as we have problems or don't have problems, or as I do another motor, I can see where I was. So it's a good idea to keep a notebook. This notebook here is a older, probably one of my, look, it says RPM Racing 2002, 2008 Rocket. So that tells me that this is all my setup sheets for the suspension on my dirt late model. I actually think Brad might have wrote this one, because that's the last dirt late model I raced. So I was looking for a pad so I could start on the Hemi. So no longer is it a super late model dirt. Now it's for a top alcohol funding car. Okay. So when I checked my piston in the wall, number one, I had 11,000s, 10,000s. 5 was as loose as 15, 7, 13, 14, 15, 12 on 6, 13 and a half on 8. Probably would be, and this is just a throw together grenade motor, would have been fine, but yours truly, I'm always striving for better. I called up Swain Coatings and I asked them, I said, listen, I got some cylinders that are really loose. I got some oddball sleeves that are loose. I don't want to, of course I could buy new sleeves. I could call Darton and get sleeves. Sleeves are $125 a sleeve. So I could drop another $1,000 and change the sleeves. I said, what about getting the skirts coated? Like they used to do on like the Jet Hot and so forth. So he said, yeah, we could do that. No problem. Send them up. Never dealt with them before. They seemed like really good guys. They knocked it out for us. So what I did was, remember, I ordered 10 pistons from Justin. I decided just to send up 8, and I'm glad I did. So they came back last week to dry film coating. Look really good. They masked them off, and they were a little scratch there where I was putting the mic on to check it. So I asked him, what is the durability on this? And he says, it's not nothing that can last forever, but it'll definitely fix a problem if you're not happy, if you're too loose. And I said, well, what's the max coating? I got some piston, the wall clearance, it's like 15 thou. I'd like to take that down a little bit. He said, well, send them out, and on the purchase order, put high build, so I know that, we're going to put the most we can. He said, in the high build, we'll put 2 to 2.5 thousandths on the piston. So I said, great, that'll work well. 2.5 thou, I mean, I don't mind a 10 thousandths piston to wall. Especially if we don't have the tune right, that gives us a little bit of leeway. Well, I didn't realize, this is always the case, Pistons came back this week. I mic'd them. When he said he was going to put 2.5 thou on the piston, I didn't realize what he meant was he was going to put 2.5 thou per side, which, I mean, isn't a big deal. It's a little more. I mean, we're only talking another 2.5 thousand. So altogether, now I have a 5 thousandths piston to wall difference from the coated and the not coated. Now, Aries says my minimal clearance should be 7 thou. I never like to run anything on the minimal side. That's not how I like to live. But so this is what we got, and I'm glad. Like I said, I left a couple pistons out. So here's my clearance without the coatings. Here's my clearance with the coating. 11 without the coating, 6.5 with the coating, 6 with the coating, 10 without. Now the other ones here, 15 took us down to 10. That's cool. 13, it took us down to 8. 14 took us down to 9. So I think what I'm going to do, number 1 and number 3 cylinder were the tightest. I could throw it back in the hone and take some more material out. That's not a problem. Like I said, I played with this to get these cylinders straight. They were so far off, I wasn't going to try to, normally, you take the biggest one and all the smaller ones, you match them up, but I didn't want, you see the loosest, we had 15 thousandths on 5. Yeah, I could have sat there and made them all 15 thousandths, and then we would have been 10 on the coated pistons. But I never ran a piston I had sent out to get coated, and I don't know how long the coating will last. He couldn't give me a definitive answer either. He said, it's not going to last forever. He said, but it'll definitely tighten it up. So whatever that means, I figure I'd try it. Cost me $40 a piston to get them coated. I know this is a really popular deal on some of the nitrous motors to prevent scuffing, but I'm not doing it to prevent scuffing. I was doing it to tighten up the piston to wall because I don't like having 15 thousandths rock in the piston slapping back and forth, because that plays hell on the skirts. You could collapse the skirt in a minute slamming that hard. So what I think I'm going to do, number 1 and number 3, I have 2 pistons still that are uncoated. Remember, I bought 10, sent out only 8. So I'll put the 2 uncoated pistons in 1 and 3, and the rest I'll put the coated pistons in. So 6 is down to my minimum 7, so we're just going to go with, hope that breaks in pretty quick and maybe knocks off about 1 thou of that coating. So anyway, that's where I'm at with the Hemi, getting back on that. I'm going to pull the crank out now that I just had mocked up in there, and I'm going to start cutting rings. I got my, well, they're not Childs and Albert anymore. They're Ackerley and Childs. They're right here on the shelf, been waiting on me. Right there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut them up per cylinder, mark the cylinders where they're going, write it down on my end gap. I know my end gap, will come out to where it needs to be. So not really worried about that too much. But we'll get cutting some end gaps up, and this week, this short block should be together. My next video, I'll probably show you guys how I degree the cam in on these Hemis. They're a little different degreeing these in on a blown motor than an NA motor. We use the lifter method, which we roll 50 thousandths past on the number 1 intake lobe. Little different than how you would normally do it with a degree wheel using your intake center line method. This is a little different, and I'll explain that in a little better detail. The reason this is different because there are no degrees like on a harmonic balancer or anything like that. It's a gear drive. There are no degrees there, so it's infinitely adjustable. But we'll go over that, and I'll make sense of that for you when we get to that point. So the next day or so, I'm gonna put this short block together. Meantime, the shop's busy as hell. Got a little Oldsmobile done for our customer we were working on last week. That was adjusting the valves on. It's ready to go out the door. Pump's primed up, and working on trying to get an engine dyno in here. Been talking about that for years, so that might be something I'm gonna try to acquire here shortly, because got so many motors that go out to hands that don't know what they're doing, and I really need to send them out with data. You know, the day of doing motors, and most of the guys you dealt with were racers and knew their way around stuff. That day is come and gone, and you really, unfortunately, got a lot of people that mess with this stuff that have money but don't have much sense. So you got to cover yourself. So we're working on that. Again, the boat's done. Not as fun as I thought it would be. I feel like my whole life has been just chasing my past and what I used to have fun on. Go out there and ride around, burn up some gas, and yeah, I mean, it's all right. I don't know. But anyway, just want to catch up with you guys. Back on the Hemi, top alcohol 500-inch Veney coming at you. And, oh yeah, the mad thrash on the red car. Had one viewer tell me, "Will you change plans like I change underwear?" Well, it's kind of out of my hands. I was going to throw that together to get to my buddy's race in October, but my brother kind of dead set on wanting to sell it and get him taken care of. So I'm going to push on this Hemi and try to get it in the main car and try to get that up there to Budds Creek, Maryland in October. So, all right, a lot of information. 22 minutes of me running my yap. So I'll check in with you guys a little later this week. Have a good week, guys. Take it easy.